In the middle of the Second World War, with American patriotism at fever pitch, a group of school children refused to salute the flag. They meant no disrespect. Their faith simply forbade it. For that refusal, they were expelled, branded delinquents, and their parents were threatened with jail. And then the Supreme Court did something it almost never does. It looked at a decision it had made just 3 years earlier and admitted it had been wrong. The government, it ruled, cannot force you to salute anything. This is the story of West Virginia versus Barnette, the case that established one of the most powerful and least understood ideas in the Constitution, that the freedom of speech includes the freedom not to speak. One note before we begin. This is legal history and education, not legal advice. Start with what makes this case so unusual. Almost every free speech story is about the government trying to stop you from saying something. This one is the mirror image. Here, the government was trying to force people to speak, to stand, raise a hand, and declare a belief out loud, whether they held it or not. That is a quieter, stranger kind of power. And the question was whether the state possessed it at all. The year is 1943. The United States is deep in a world war, and patriotism is not just encouraged, it is expected everywhere. Flags fly on every street. In classrooms across the country, the school day begins with children rising to salute the flag and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. In that atmosphere, refusing to take part didn't just look odd, it looked like betrayal. And just 3 years earlier, the Supreme Court had already blessed that expectation. In a 1940 case called Gobitis, the court faced almost this exact question and ruled 8-1 that a school could indeed require the flag salute. National unity, the court reasoned, was important enough to outweigh one family's religious objection. The message was clear: salute or face the consequences. That decision had a dark aftermath. With the nation's highest court appearing to side against them, Jehovah's Witnesses across the country became targets. In town after town, they faced harassment, expulsion, and even mob violence. A ruling meant to strengthen national unity had, in practice, handed a green light to persecution. So why did these families refuse in the first place? The witnesses took literally a command from the book of Exodus: make no graven image and do not bow down to it. To them, the flag was exactly such an image, and saluting it would be an act of worship they owed to God alone. Their refusal was not contempt for the country. It was obedience to what they believed was a higher law. But West Virginia was undeterred. Drawing directly on the language of the Gobitis decision, the state's Board of Education made the flag salute a mandatory part of every school day. Any student who refused would be treated as guilty of insubordination, and insubordination meant expulsion. An expulsion set off a chain of punishment. An expelled child was now, by law, unlawfully absent from school. That absence could brand the child a delinquent, and delinquents could be sent to reformatories built for young criminals. Meanwhile, the parents faced prosecution, fines, even jail. The full machinery of the state aimed at a child for declining to make a gesture. Among the families who refused were the Barnettes. Their children, following their faith in their parents, would not salute. They were sent home from school day after day. Rather than surrender, the family went to federal court, asking that this whole apparatus of compulsion be stopped. The case climbed to the Supreme Court, the very same question it had answered just 3 years before in Gobitis. But the court that heard it was not quite the same court. Its membership had shifted. The country had watched what compulsory patriotism unleashed on the witnesses. And 2 of the justices who had voted with the majority in Gobitis had already begun publicly to signal regret. The decision came down on June 14, 1943, Flag Day of all days. By a vote of 6-3, the court reversed itself. It overruled Gobitis outright, and the task of explaining why fell to one of the most gifted writers ever to sit on the court, Justice Robert H. Jackson. Jackson refused to treat this as a narrow question about one religion's exemption. He reframed it into something universal. The real issue, he said, was not whether Jehovah's Witnesses could be excused from the salute. It was whether any government in America has the power to force a citizen, any citizen, to declare a belief. Once you put it that way, the answer became almost obvious, because the answer was no. A Bill of Rights that guards your right to speak your own mind, Jackson wrote, cannot also leave officials free to compel you to utter what is not in your mind. The First Amendment protects the speaker, and that protection has to include the right to stay silent. To force the words out is to invade the one place government is supposed to have no authority, the inside of your own head. And then he wrote the sentence that made the case immortal. If there is any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion, or force citizens to confess by word or act their faith therein. He also explained why this had to be a matter for the courts, and not simply for majority vote. The very purpose of a Bill of Rights, he wrote, was to withdraw certain subjects from the vicissitudes of political controversy, to place them beyond the reach of majorities and officials. Your fundamental rights, he insisted, may not be submitted to vote. They depend on the outcome of no elections. Jackson knew the strongest objection. Doesn't a nation, especially one at war, need unity? His response was unforgettable. Unity forced by law, he warned, is a hollow thing. Compulsory unification of opinion, he wrote, achieves only the unanimity of the graveyard. You can command the gesture. You can never command the belief behind it. And that was the heart of it. Real loyalty, real patriotism is voluntary. Or it is nothing at all. Forcing a frightened child to mouth the words produces a performance, not a patriot. The flag stands for freedom, and that freedom has to include the freedom of the person who chooses not to salute it. A liberty that vanishes the moment it is tested was never a liberty to begin with. Not everyone agreed. Justice Felix Frankfurter, himself a member of a long-persecuted minority, wrote a passionate dissent. His point was not that the flag salute law was wise. He thought it foolish. It was about the role of judges. The court, he argued, should not strike down a law simply because it is illiberal or unkind. Fixing bad laws is the job of voters and legislatures, not of 9 unelected justices imposing their own values. It is a serious argument about democracy itself, and it never entirely goes away. But the majority held, and it is worth pausing on just how rare this moment was. The Supreme Court publicly confessed error, reversing itself in only 3 years in the middle of a world war, on behalf of one of the most despised minorities in the country. Courts almost never say the words, "We were wrong." This one did out loud on Flag Day. What Barnette established has a name: the doctrine against compelled speech. The government cannot force you to recite the pledge, salute the flag, or affirm any belief you do not hold. And that principle reaches far past the schoolhouse. It is the reason the state cannot make you sign your name to an opinion that isn't yours, or mouth a message you reject. And it is still the rule today. Whenever the question returns, can a student be compelled to stand for the pledge? Can the government force anyone to voice a view they don't share? The answer runs straight back into Barnette. You have a right to remain silent not only when you are accused of a crime, but when the state wants to put its words in your mouth. Step back and look at the arc this series has traced through the First Amendment. In Schenck, the government punished a man for what he said. In Barnette, it tried to force people to say what they did not believe. In Tinker, students were punished for a silent, symbolic protest. 3 cases, 3 faces of a single freedom: your right to control what comes out of your mouth and what stays in. As for the Barnette children, they never set out to make history. They only wanted to go to school without betraying their faith. But their refusal, quiet, costly, and deeply unpopular in its moment, drew one of the brightest lines in all of American law. The state may govern what you do, but it does not own what you think or what you are willing to say. So the next time you see someone decline to stand or refuse to recite or simply stay silent while everyone around them speaks, remember a family in West Virginia, a flag, and a wartime court that decided freedom means nothing if it can be commanded. The government may ask for your loyalty. Under our Constitution, it cannot force you to confess it. If that's the kind of thing you wanted to understand more deeply, consider subscribing. We take one landmark case at a time, and we try to get it right. Thank you for watching. And remember, this video is for education and history. It is not legal advice.